6 of the most popular neck fans in America, priced anywhere from $16.99 to $149. We pulled the real test data on every one. Continuous runtime under load, decibel readings, and what happens when these fans run on their highest setting instead of whatever's printed on the box. The $149 one lost, not to the second most expensive fan. It lost to a fan that costs a fifth of the price. CNN_ ran these fans on high speed until they died, with a stopwatch, and the most expensive fan in this lineup, the one marketed as a wearable air conditioner with semiconductor cooling technology, didn't even win on the one thing it's supposed to do best, because Consumer Reports found something more important first. It doesn't actually cool you. It just moves air around your neck. The same mechanism as a $16.99 fan, with a much higher price tag attached to the word conditioner. This category is flooded with nearly identical listings, same U-shaped band, same handful of vents, same stock photos, which makes it almost impossible to tell a fan that's actually worth $30 from one that's worth $6. We're ranking all 6 of the fans we investigated, worst to best, using data from people who actually measured them. No sponsorships, no free samples, and finishing with the one that earned its price tag instead of borrowing credibility from a bigger number on the box. Number 5. Amacool, $16.99. Amacool is one of the highest volume neck fan brands sold on Amazon, consistently showing up as the budget recommendation in nearly every roundup on the internet. Marketed with the specific language ultra quiet, paired with strong wind and a 360-degree adjustable design that lets you bend the arms toward your face or away from it. Those two claims, ultra quiet and strong wind, sit right next to each other on the product listing, and that's worth pausing on, because on a fan this size, with a motor this small, those two things are in direct tension. You get quiet by running the motor slower. You get strong wind by running it faster and louder. A fan that claims both at once is usually delivering neither at its extreme, and CNN_'s testing backs that up in the number that matters most. When they ran the Amacool on its highest setting, continuously, until it died, it lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes. Do the math on that, and it gets worse before it gets better. $16.99 divided by 2 hours and 15 minutes of real high-speed use works out to about $7.55 for every hour of actual cooling you get out of it, which sounds almost reasonable until you remember that 2 hours and 15 minutes doesn't cover a single workday, a single flight, or a single afternoon at an outdoor event without a charger in your bag. Pick one up if you're standing in front of it, and you'll notice how light it is immediately, which reads as a positive right up until you realize the plastic housing is the same thin-walled construction you'll find on nearly every fan at this exact price point in this exact category. There's a reason budget neck fans all feel roughly the same in your hand. They're built to hit a price, not a runtime. $16.99 buys you 2 hours of real relief and a fan you'll be reaching for the charging cable on well before dinner. Number 4. Calm Life. Calm Life has actually been featured as an NBC Select Deal of the Day, praised on the record for being lightweight, comfortable enough to forget you're wearing it, and built with 64 air vents wrapping around the band for what the brand calls full 360-degree cooling, backed by a claimed battery life stretching up to 9 hours depending on the speed you're running. That sounds like a meaningfully better fan than Amacool on paper. It is not. When CNN_ ran the Calm Life through the exact same test, highest setting, continuous, stopwatch running, it lasted 2 hours and 5 minutes, 10 minutes less than the Amacool you just heard about. And here's the detail that actually explains why. When CNN_ ordered both the Amacool and the Calm Life for the same testing round, they arrived in identical packaging, not similar, identical. Same overall shape, same vent placement, same button layout, nearly matching spec sheets, the kind of resemblance you'd expect from 2 units off the same production line rather than 2 competing companies. The only difference CNN's own testers could actually point to was the logo printed on the front of the unit. That's not a coincidence you're supposed to notice, and it's exactly the kind of thing this category depends on you not noticing. 2 brand names, 1 factory somewhere upstream doing the actual manufacturing, and a 10-minute gap in battery performance that's well within the range of normal manufacturing variance between 2 units built on the same line. Calm Life typically retails for a few dollars more than Amacool, occasionally discounted as a limited-time deal to make it look like a bargain, which means you're paying a premium for a fan that by every meaningful measurement finished behind the cheaper option wearing a different name. If you already own an Amacool and you're shopping for a backup or a gift, do not buy a Calm Life thinking you're getting something meaningfully different. Set them side by side if you ever get the chance, and the resemblance will be obvious within about 5 seconds. This is the same fan you just met 1 spot ago. It changed its shirt, not its motor. Those first 2 are what happens when a fan is cheap, interchangeable, and at least somewhat honest about what it is. The next 3 get more expensive, and the promises attached to them get bigger, which means the gap between the label and the lab gets more interesting to look at. Quick gut check before we move on, because it matters for the rest of this list. If you already own one of these first two fans, you now know exactly why it dies as fast as it does, and you know it's not a defective unit, it's the category. If you've made it this far, you're about to see why the middle of this list is where the real deception in this category actually lives, not at the bottom. Number 3. AO-Cool. AO-Cool sits in the same sub-$40 bracket as most of the fans on this list, and it was tested by CNN underscored in the exact same head-to-head round as AMA-Cool, ComLife, and the fan you'll meet at the very end of this video. On the runtime test, it actually performed well. 4 hours and 26 minutes on the highest setting, more than double what either AMA-Cool or ComLife managed, which on paper makes it look like the clear step up in this price range. Here's the catch, and it's a catch CNN's own testers flagged directly in their notes. Despite the solid battery life, the strength of AO-Cool's 3-speed settings wasn't as strong as most of the other fans they tested in that same round. In plain terms, it lasts longer because it's pushing less air. The motor draws less power, which is exactly why the battery stretches further, and it's exactly why the breeze coming off this thing is noticeably weaker than the competition. That's a real trade-off, and it's one worth being honest about, instead of just calling it a loss outright. If you genuinely just want something running quietly on your neck for background comfort during a desk shift, and you don't need real force behind the air, a longer runtime paired with a gentler breeze might actually suit you fine. There's a legitimate buyer for that combination, someone sitting under office air conditioning most of the day who just wants a little extra circulation, not someone standing on hot asphalt trying to survive a shift. But that's not what most people are buying a neck fan for, and it's definitely not what the marketing copy on these listings implies when it promises strong wind alongside impressive battery numbers in the same breath, on the same page, in the same sentence sometimes. A longer-lasting fan is only a genuinely good deal if it's actually doing the job you bought it for in the first place, and independent testing found this one solved a problem you probably weren't that worried about while quietly under-delivering on the one thing you were. Great battery, mediocre wind. You didn't buy a neck fan for the battery, you bought it for the wind, and that's the one column where this entry comes up short against nearly everything else on this list, including fans that cost less. Number 2. CIV Power, $25.99. CIV Power is one of the most consistently recommended fans in this entire category, backed by more than 12,000 reviews on Amazon and a headphone-inspired design, roughly 9 ounces, built around 78 individual air vents split into a double turbo system for what the brand describes as 270-degree airflow coverage. This is a fan people genuinely like, and it's easy to see why at first glance. It's also a fan where the gap between what's marketed and what's real sits in plain sight, if you know exactly where to look for it. CIV Power's own website states, in its own official specifications, that the battery provides 3 to 16 hours of use. Read the product title on the actual Amazon listing and you'll see the number 16 doing all the work up top. The headline claim, the number designed to catch your eye while you're scrolling past 40 other nearly identical listings. The number 3 is real too. It's just not the number in bold, and it's not the number in the title. An independent reviewer who bought a CIV Power unit with his own money and wore it for 3 weeks through a brutal New York summer, cross-checking his own findings against hundreds of other Amazon and Reddit reviews before publishing, found that 16-hour claim was technically true, but only on the lowest setting, in a cool room, moving barely any air at all. Run it on the highest setting, in real heat, the setting you'd actually want to use on the one day you genuinely need a neck fan, and it drains in roughly 2 to 3 hours, matching almost exactly the low end of the range CIV Power's own spec sheet quietly discloses further down the same page. This isn't a fabricated number pulled out of nowhere to make a point. CIV Power technically told you the truth the entire time. It's just that the truth they put in fine print and the truth they put in the headline are two very different numbers, and most shoppers scrolling on their phone only ever see the headline before they hit buy. At $25.99, that's $9 more than the AMA-Cool you heard about earlier, for a fan whose honest, real-world high-speed runtime lands in roughly the same neighborhood once the marketing number gets stripped away and you're left with what the motor can actually deliver. Check the listing yourself if you don't believe any of this. The 16-hour claim is in the title, right where you'll see it first, in the first 3 words most people read before scrolling. The 3-hour range is buried 3 or 4 scrolls down, past the bullet points, past the lifestyle photography, exactly where most people stop reading before they check out. The spec sheet isn't lying to you, and that's actually the more uncomfortable part of this entry. The marketing team is just choosing very carefully which half of the truth gets the bold text and which half gets buried, and 12,000 reviewers bought this fan largely on the strength of a number that only applies to the setting nobody actually wants to use. That review count is real, and most of those reviews aren't dishonest either. Plenty of people rate this fan highly because on low, in a cool room, it genuinely does what's promised. The rating system just isn't built to capture the gap between the setting people rated on and the setting people actually needed it for. Before we get to the 2 fans at the extremes of this list, one at $149, and one that beats every single fan you've heard so far. It's worth understanding what these things are actually doing to your body, because that context changes how you should read every single claim on every box in this entire category. Every fan on this list so far, every single one under $30, works on exactly the same principle. They move air. That's the whole mechanism, start to finish. Moving air across your skin speeds up the evaporation of sweat, and evaporating sweat pulls heat away from your body, which is why you feel cooler standing in front of any fan, whether it costs $16 or $600. That's real physics, and it genuinely works, but there's a meaningful difference between feeling cooler and actually lowering your body's core temperature. And independent research on exactly this kind of device draws a clear line between the two. A review of electric fan research found that while fans do improve sweat evaporation, the benefit is usually too small to meaningfully lower your core temperature once the surrounding air climbs above roughly 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which happens to be exactly the condition most people are reaching for a neck fan in the first place. One study specifically testing neck cooling during exercise recorded a drop in internal body temperature of about 1/3 of a degree Fahrenheit. Real, measurable, and genuinely not nothing, but nowhere close to what most people picture when a box uses the words air conditioner. The National Institutes of Health has actually ranked cooling methods by measured effectiveness, and conductive cooling applied directly to the neck, which is what several of these devices are attempting to do, lands near the bottom of that entire list. An ice bath is dramatically more effective at actually lowering body temperature than anything you can wear around your neck, which is obviously not something anybody selling a $149 wearable air conditioner is going to print on the box. None of this means these fans are useless or that you shouldn't own one. It means cools you down and moves air across your skin are two genuinely different claims, and every fan on this list so far has been selling you the second one while occasionally implying the first, sometimes in the product name itself. This is also exactly why price and performance separate so sharply from each other in this specific category, more than almost any other product category we've tested. In a lot of product categories, a stronger motor, better materials, or more advanced engineering genuinely buys you a better outcome, and the price tag tracks reasonably closely with real-world results. Neck fans break that assumption, because the physical ceiling on what moving air across your neck can actually do to your body is fixed by biology, not by how much money went into the motor. Once a fan is strong enough to move a meaningful amount of air, and cheap ones absolutely can be, spending more money buys you a stronger breeze and a fancier vocabulary, not a fundamentally different physical outcome. Keep that distinction in your head for the next few minutes, because it's about to matter more than it has for any fan on this entire list. Number 1. Taurus Coolify Air, $149. Taurus is the closest thing to an established premium name in this entire category, with a wide catalog of neck-worn devices ranging from around $50 all the way up past $250, and marketing copy across their own website that talks about revolutionary cooling down in seconds, and saying goodbye to heat waves for good. That's a genuinely wide spread of price tiers under one brand name, which is worth noticing on its own. It means Taurus isn't just selling you a fan, it's selling you a ladder, where each step up the price ladder is framed as meaningfully more advanced than the one below it. Even when the underlying mechanism barely changes, the Coolify Air specifically is marketed as a wearable air conditioner, built around what the brand calls thermoelectric cooling technology, and a set of high-performance micro-cooling units, explicitly promising instant temperature drops rather than just airflow, which is language none of the other 5 fans on this list use anywhere in their marketing. That distinction, cooling versus airflow, is the entire premium pitch. It's the reason this fan costs 5, 6, even 9 times more than the fans you've already heard about tonight. It's supposed to be, by definition, a fundamentally different category of product than everything else on this list, not just a stronger version of the same thing. Consumer Reports tested it directly, under controlled conditions, with multiple testers, and their finding cuts straight through the marketing language in a single sentence. The intensity of the Coolify Air comes from sheer airflow force, not from any measurable cooling effect, because the unit blows the same ambient air that's already surrounding you, rather than air that's actually been chilled by the semiconductor hardware built inside it. Their testers noted the airflow was strong enough that a co-tester's cheeks went slightly numb after about an hour of continuous wear. That's real, physical wind force, undeniably strong, genuinely impressive on paper. It is not a drop in temperature. Those are two completely different physical sensations, and Consumer Reports' own controlled testing found this fan, at this price, delivering the first one while marketing itself around the second, in the product name itself, in the word conditioner. The word air conditioner carries a very specific implication that most shoppers take at face value: air coming out colder than the air already around you. Independent testing on this exact unit found that isn't what's actually happening in practice. You're paying for a substantially stronger motor and a product name that borrows the vocabulary of climate control technology without the underlying physics to back it up at this price point. You are not paying for air that's actually been cooled below ambient temperature. Run the math and it gets uncomfortable fast. $149 for a fan that, per Consumer Reports' own controlled test, operates on the exact same fundamental principle as the $16.99 Amacool you heard about all the way back at number 5. The motor inside the Taurus is stronger, noticeably so. The mechanism actually moving the air across your skin is identical. If you want to check this yourself before you spend a single dollar, pull up both listings side by side on your phone right now. Only one of them uses the phrase air conditioner anywhere in the title or the surrounding marketing copy. Per independent testing, only one of them is actually doing what that phrase implies to a reasonable shopper, and it isn't the one charging $149 for it. One independent testing group that's evaluated more than 15 different neck-worn cooling devices since 2024 put it bluntly in their own internal scoring system, built specifically to compare cheap and expensive models against each other on a level playing field. Even their most expensive models never scored above an 8 out of 10, while their cheapest budget picks never dropped below a 6, meaning the actual gap in real-world satisfaction between the most expensive fans in this category and the cheapest ones is a lot smaller than the gap in price between them. $149, and by every meaningful measure available, it does the same fundamental job as the cheapest fan on this entire list. The name on the box, and the vocabulary borrowed from a completely different appliance category, is doing more work than the semiconductor inside it. Now that you know exactly what to skip and why, here's the fan that actually held up under every single test we just walked through. This isn't a consolation pick tucked onto the end to soften the video after 5 disappointments in a row. This is the fan that beat every single unit on this list on the one number that actually matters most in this entire category: how long it keeps moving real usable air before you're reaching for a charger. Gulaki, $29.99. Gulaki isn't the cheapest fan in this lineup, and it isn't trying to be the most technologically advanced either. It's a straightforward bladeless neck fan with 3 speed settings, 64 air vents split across 2 flexible arms, a soft TPE neckband that adjusts to fit different neck sizes comfortably, USB-C charging around the back, and a single button on the side that cycles through power, speed, and an LED accent light that shifts through 64 different colors. Nothing about the pitch is dramatic, and nothing about the box uses the vocabulary of climate control technology. It doesn't claim semiconductors, it doesn't claim it's an air conditioner. It claims to be a comfortable, long-lasting fan, and every piece of independent testing available on this unit says that's exactly, precisely, unremarkably what it is. There's something worth sitting with in how unremarkable that pitch actually is, compared to everything else on this list. Every fan that failed tonight failed by overpromising in one specific direction. Amacool and ComLife oversold quiet and strong in the same sentence when the two trade off against each other. CIV Power oversold a headline number that only applied to a setting nobody wants to use. Taurus oversold an entire appliance category it isn't actually operating in. Gulaki's listing, by comparison, reads almost boring. 3 speeds, 64 vents, a battery, some LED lights nobody asked for. That restraint turns out to be the tell, because a company that isn't inflating its claims usually isn't inflating its price to match, either. CNN_ ran the Gulaki through the identical test they ran on Amacool, ComLife, and Aocool. Highest setting, continuous use, stopwatch running until it physically died. Same conditions, same room, same methodology, 5 hours and 27 minutes. That's more than double Amacool's runtime, more than double ComLife's, and over an hour longer than Aocool managed even with its noticeably weaker airflow working in its favor the entire time. This isn't a one-off result either, which matters more than a single good test. CNN_ has named Gulaki its top overall neck fan pick across multiple consecutive years running, not a single lucky testing cycle, and it currently holds a 4.3-star average across more than 2,800 Amazon reviews, a review volume and consistency that's genuinely hard to fake or manipulate at that scale. Run the actual price per performance math on this, and the gap becomes impossible to ignore. $29.99 for 5 hours and 27 minutes of tested real-world high-speed runtime works out to roughly $5.50 for every hour of genuine use. That's the best number on this entire list, full stop. It's cheaper per hour of real cooling than the $16.99 Amacool sitting at the bottom of this ranking, and it's a fraction of what you'd pay per hour with the Taurus, all while actually outlasting it in the one test that measured runtime directly and honestly. None of that means it's flawless, and a fan this far ahead of the rest of the field deserves exactly the same scrutiny as every fan that failed earlier in this video. BGR's own review flagged the one legitimate drawback worth knowing before you buy. At around 10 ounces, it's noticeably heavier than most of the ultra-light budget fans on this list, and multiple independent reviewers mentioned feeling that extra weight settle in after a few continuous hours of wear, particularly toward the end of a long day. The 64-color LED lighting is by most accounts across multiple reviews a gimmick you'll enable once to show a friend and then leave switched off for the rest of the fan's working life. And at a rated 30 decibels, it's quiet, genuinely quiet compared to most of what's on this list tonight. But it isn't the single quietest fan tested in this entire category either. So if silence is your absolute top priority over everything else, there are marginally quieter options out there. Those are real trade-offs worth knowing, not invented ones designed to make this pick look more balanced than it is. What Gulaki doesn't do, at any point, is pretend to be something it isn't. It doesn't call itself an air conditioner. It doesn't borrow vocabulary from semiconductor technology to justify a price point 5 times higher than what it actually costs to build and ship. It just quietly, consistently outlasted every single fan on this entire list, including the one that cost 5 times as much, using nothing more exotic than a well-built motor, a properly sized battery, and an honest product description. Before you close this video, here's the one rule that replaces everything you just watched, the single check that would have saved every dollar wasted on this entire list. If a neck fan's packaging uses the words air conditioner, semiconductor, or instant cooling, stop and look for a specific, independently verified temperature drop number before you trust any of it, not a number the brand itself generated and printed on their own box. If you can't find one backed by outside testing from somewhere that has no financial stake in the answer, you're very likely paying premium prices for the exact same moving air a $17 fan already gives you, just wearing a stronger motor and a much better vocabulary lesson. That single check, maybe 30 seconds on your phone before you check out, would have saved $130 on this list alone. And it keeps working on every neck fan that launches after this video goes up too. Not just the 6 we covered tonight. It also generalizes past neck fans if you want to carry it further. The pattern here, a premium name borrowing vocabulary from a completely different, more expensive category to justify a price jump that the underlying mechanism doesn't earn, shows up constantly once you start looking for it. Space heaters that call themselves climate control systems, water bottles that call themselves purification systems. The specific words change by category, the move behind them doesn't. Once you've caught it once, on something as low stakes as a fan you wear around your neck, it gets a lot easier to spot the next time a box is trying to sell you a bigger category than the product actually belongs to. If someone in your life is about to drop $150 on one of these, thinking they're finally buying a real air conditioner for their neck, sending them this video before they check out might genuinely be the single most useful thing you do with it all week. And if this changed how you look at the word cooling printed on a box, wait until you see what we found testing portable power banks, because that same exact gap, the number in the title versus the number that's actually true, shows up there too, just measured in milliamp hours instead of hours of runtime. That one's coming next.